Hi everyone, Cam here from Yes Auto, and today I'm going to be driving this thing. It's the new Cupra Formentor. And while Cupras in the past have just been rebadged and sportier versions of Seats, this new Formentor is a brand new product for Cupra and isn't based on any other product from the Volkswagen group. Well, sort of. Anyway, what I want to know today is, does it feel like a brand new product, and what's it like to drive? Well, we're going to find out, but before I get into the review, remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. Is it a hatchback? Is it an SUV? Is it an estate? Well, it's kind of all of them really. The Formentor is essentially a crossover, but it just kind of incorporates all the elements that you could want from a car. For instance, you've got this big long bonnet that stretches out the front, a bit like a hatchback, but oddly enough, you've got these massive defined creases in the bonnet, so when you're sat behind the wheel, it kind of feels like you're driving a muscle car. The front end, meanwhile, is much more aggressive than what you got on a standard Seat, and I just think it looks really very good. And although the grille's a little bit on the small side, I think it has a properly aggressive look. There's also the Cupra badge, which has been around for about 3 years now, and I still think it looks really tacky. A bit like the Wolf Race logo, that aftermarket cheap product you used to be able to buy in Halfords. So yeah, not a fan. But the rest of the car I really like. You've got these really defined lines coming further back, also with a bit of gloss grey around the outside to give it that crossover look. You've got the Cupra badge on the brake calipers, which looks very smart. And also a sloping rear roofline that comes into this wing here, which I bet is pretty useless, but hey, it makes the car look good. In fact, if anything, I kind of feel like from this side profile, it's kind of a cheaper version of an Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. The Stelvio vibes continue at the back of the car. So while on the Cupra we've got this light bar that runs across the width of the car, you get these triangular tail lights which are very similar to that of the Stelvio. And just bear in mind that there is no relation to this car and the Stelvio. They're from two completely different car companies. You also get a quad exhaust system like a Stelvio. And unlike most VW Group products, these are all real. There's no fakery going on here whatsoever. Now onto the boot. We've got, if I can find the catch, an automatic tailgate and 420 litres of storage, which is about 40 more than what you get on the Leon hatchback. So there's a little bit of a high load lip, and one of the things I find quite strange about it is most cars today don't come with spare wheels. You've got to spec them, but on the Cupra Formentor, it comes as standard, so there's not a lot of extra storage beneath the boot. Still, with 420 litres, you've got more space than you would do on a conventional hatchback. Now, with all the press and marketing material for this car, you would think that it only had one engine option, the fast one, but there are actually three, with a potential fourth on the way. So let's kick things off with the car that we have here. It's got the tried and tested VW Group 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that you'll find in the Volkswagen Golf R and the Arteon R and the Tiguan R and the Audi S3. In here, it produces 306 brake horsepower, which is sent to all four wheels through a 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox and can go from 0 to 62 in 4.9 seconds. Alongside that is a plug-in hybrid variant, and that's essentially a 1.4 litre petrol engine that's stuck together with an electric motor and battery system. Now combined, they produce 242 brake horsepower, which goes to the front wheels only through a 6-speed dual-clutch gearbox. But the crucial thing here, though, is that you can drive it for up to 36 miles on electric energy alone. There's also a 1.5 litre motor producing 148 brake horsepower, and you can get that either as a manual or as a DSG Auto. It's going to be kind of on your wallet, but it'll also be much more boring, probably. The one I want, though, is the upcoming 5-cylinder car, and there's no official power figure just yet, but it's expected to produce somewhere in the region of 400 brake horsepower. Stepping into the Cupra Formentor is a little bit like walking into a hipster cafe or barbershop, because there's a lot of black surfaces in here, and whatever isn't a black surface is highlighted by this bronze trim and bronze stitching. Now, if you take away the fact that the overall layout is pretty much identical to that of the Leon, it does feel like a pretty distinct product in here. I can step in and know that this is a Cupra and not just a rebadged Seat. Now, all cars get a 12.3-inch infotainment system as standard, as well as a 10-inch virtual cockpit. And the latter is absolutely superb. You've got graphics that are unique to the Cupra, so it feels like you're in a distinct product, but you also have lots of different ways in which you can customize it. So if you don't like the way it looks at the moment, where you've got a traditional RPM gauge and your speedo, you can just shake it up a little bit for something that's got more numbers on it or less numbers. Now, the infotainment system itself, personally, I prefer it to what you get on VW products. It's a little bit cleaner, it's a bit more vibrant, although there is an element of budget airline about it, with it kind of being these very basic blue, purple, green buttons along the bottom. The only thing I will say is that, again, it's quite complicated to use on the move, and you still have these kind of sliders along the bottom for increasing and decreasing the heat in here. And if you want to go and manage the aircon, it's a really complicated menu. The actual buttons on here are relatively straightforward. It's basically switch the aircon on and off and increase or decrease the fan speed, but the overall layout is just unnecessarily complicated. Of course, you can bypass a lot of that, apart from the aircon stuff, just by plugging in your smartphone and use either Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which you can access wirelessly too. The steering wheel is also a really big highlight in here, because not only have you got a nice mix of physical buttons, so if you don't like the haptic feedback that you get on a VW Golf, then this should be right up your alley. But you also have a really nice grip. This feels like a properly sporty wheel, and it's nice and thin too. Nice paddles back here. There's actually, you've got two big buttons down here as well. One is the engine stop-start, like you get on an Audi RS model, and there's also a button to cycle through the Cupra menu, so you can go from something like a normal road setting, which calms the suspension down a little bit and quietens the exhaust note, or you can go to full Cupra mode, which opens up the valves, but also pumps in this really artificial V8 sound that is kind of cool at first, but when you hear that it's artificial, it just kind of ruins the mood a little bit. Something that confused me as well is that the traction control button to switch it on and off is down here at the base of the center console. And that's usually where you find a start-stop button. So every time I get in this car, I feel like I'm going to turn the car on, but I'm actually just turning off the traction system. Now, in terms of storage, we've got a wireless charger down here, so you can keep your phone down here, but if you want to physically plug it in, there are two USB-C ports, so you will need an adapter for that. We've got a couple of little trays down here which you can use to store your house keys or your car keys if you want to. Nice big cup holder. We've got one big cup holder and then a smaller little one behind it, so it's kind of like an adult-sized drink and then a child-sized drink that can go there. Underneath the armrest, we've got admittedly quite a shallow bin with a 12-volt charger in there. And last but not least, a relatively decent bin on the driver's door. Now, the Formentor's cabin design is largely based on the Leon, so you must be thinking that it's quite a cheap car, right? Well, not if you want the fast one. In fact, it's £40,000. But wait. It's actually brimming with kit, so it's actually quite hard to spend money on speccing this car up. Because it already has all of the safety equipment and the big, large infotainment screens, the only things you can add are a panoramic roof, which is about £1,000, and also metallic paint, which is about 800 quid. So it's actually hard to spend more than 40 grand on this car. Of course, if you want a cheaper one, you could just get the one with the smaller engine, which is £26,700. And, well, you know, you could head over to yesauto.com and check out all the amazing deals we've got on there with both new and used Cupra cars. Just saying. Now, the Formentor isn't a big car, but the back seats are really impressive. So I've got the driver's seat in my position, and there's loads of legroom. And even with that coupe-like roofline, there's still absolutely bags of headroom. Now, the kind of sill does come down a little bit here, so you have to duck a bit to get in the car, but if you're 6 foot or over, you'll have plenty of space in the back of the Formentor. Now, we also have climate settings in the back here, so a couple of vents, and also if your rear passengers are feeling a bit chilly or too hot, you can change the temperature back here. And there are also 2 USB-C ports as well. This Formentor really is a nice place to be in the back. I'm in the Cupra Formentor's natural habitat, a B road. And although we're in a car that feels like it's quite big, because essentially it is an SUV, there is a certain nimbleness to it. I guess that's in part kind of thanks to this steering, which is nice and light. There's a bit of weight to it, but it does really shrink the car's footprint and make it feel like you're throwing around something that much lighter than it actually is. It's also 4-wheel drive, so it's really good at just pulling itself out of corners and throwing you into the next one. But we've also got 306 brake horsepower, and that seems perfectly suited to British B road. Something that's got 400 or 500 just can be really difficult to exploit on a public road, but something like this you can really pull out of the corners with ease. I've got the car in Cupra mode at the moment, and what that does is it opens up the exhaust a little bit to give you some of that monstrous sound coming from the engine. And when I first did it, I thought, wow, that sounds amazing. I can't believe something like this sounds like a V8. And then I took it through a tunnel and put the window down, and I realized that a lot of it is artificial sound. It's quite underwhelming. And actually, if you drive it for quite a long time in the Cupra mode, sound can get a little bit grating. Actually, it's very much an artificial V8 sound. I guess though, with that big kind of bonnet stretching out in front of you, it does kind of make you feel like you're driving a jacked up Mustang. And in Cupra mode, the suspension is stiffened up a little bit as well to give you that race car feel, but it still feels really comfortable actually. Sure, there's a slight bounciness to it that makes it feel like you're in something sporty, but isn't that the reason why you buy a Cupra Formentor? And if you want to get really geeky, you can actually delve into the car's settings on the infotainment screen and create your own custom mode. So if you wanted it to sound the V8/5-cylinder way that it does in Cupra mode, then you can do it, but also slacken off the suspension a bit. And of course, if you're driving around town, it helps to put the car in its normal setting because the exhaust quietens down and the suspension is a little bit smoother. Just the overall drive becomes nice and calm. You wouldn't think that you were driving the big brute that you were. I think this is something that pretty much anything under the VW group just absolutely nails. Is having a car that is so raw and performance focused on the surface, and if you really push it, it'll want to rip your face off. But when you're just wanting to dawdle around town and drive it like a normal car, it feels just like that, a normal car. It's a lovely thing to drive this. Let's see what this 300 horsepower is like then. This is very, very quick. It just feels like it can handle any situation. I really don't need more power than this. In fact, it'll get you from 0 to driving license suspended very, very quickly and very easily. Now we're on the motorway, I've put the car in comfort and I've also activated the active cruise control. So that means if I'm cruising along at 70 and someone in front of me starts braking, I'll also start braking as well, but it'll do it quite gently. It won't be an emergency stop. Unless, of course, someone is completely stationary in front of you, and then it'll engage an emergency stop. It also helps keep me in my line, so all I really have to do is keep my hands on the wheel, and the car will do most of it for me. I'm noticing a little bit of wind noise and also a bit of tyre noise as well, but it's about the same as what we had on the Leon estate quite recently. It's not like sports cars of old, of where you take them onto a motorway and it'll make your ears bleed. So does the Formentor feel like its own bespoke product, or just another thing churned up by the Volkswagen Group? Well, no, I really do think it takes all the best bits of the cars that it shares some components with, such as that 4-cylinder engine, which is just so quick and diverse. It's very good at being just a relaxing cruiser, but man, does it pack a punch. But it also feels like I'm in something that's distinctly Cupra. I don't feel like I'm in a jazzed up Seat, even though a lot of the interior here is pretty much the same as what you get on the new Leon. And that's also because Cupra itself just does a really good job of making it feel like you're in a distinct product. That's partly because we've got bronze everywhere, and whether you like it or not, there's nothing else that really feels like this car. And I think really to top it all off, it's going to sound really strange, but the bonnet, it really does feel like I'm in a muscle car. It's the thing that stood out to me the most when I got in this, and it still stands out to me today, just having that really kind of sporty, muscly look stretching out in front of me. Yes, it's expensive at £40,000, although you can get cheaper ones with smaller engines in them. But I don't really think it has that many rivals. The only ones that really come close to it are within the Volkswagen Group. And I just think the overall fit and finish in here is much higher than that of something that you would get from VW at the moment. Of course, we're all out looking for a deal when we buy a new car, so why not head over to yesauto.com and check out all the amazing deals we have on both new and used Cupras. But we're all after a bargain when we buy a new car, so why not head over to yesauto.com to check out all the amazing deals we've got on both new and used Cupras, because after driving this Formentor, I think if you're after a sporty SUV, this is up there with being one of the best on the market at this price level. It really is very, very good.